Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You're now tuned to the show, and I'm your host, MJ, and we're going to take another trip down horror lane. So, as you guys can tell from the title, we're going to go into episode 2 of my classic horror series. So, I'm going to be going, as you know, the guys know the rules. I'm going to be just picking randomly a couple of old school classic horror films, and I'm just going to be breaking them down a little bit or giving my points of views on them or my opinions on them. Okay, so let's get going. I don't want to be babbling all along. Anyways, so in today's episode, the first film I want to talk about from the classic horror era I want to talk about is The Little Shop of Horror. Okay, The Little Shop of Horror. Now, The Little Shop of Horror is a horror film. It was released in 1960s. Oh, and also, just in case you guys don't know, this film, The Little Shop of Horror, this is this is Jack Nicholson's first ever full-length feature premiere on the television screen. Once again, The Little Shop of Horror, which released in 1960, is actually Jack Nicholson's first ever full feature premiere film ever. That premiere. Now he didn't have a huge role or nothing. He was just had a small role, maybe like a minute or 2 minutes long, and that was it. And you never saw him in the film again. He played, if you guys have seen this film and you don't recall Jack Nicholson in The Little Shop of Horror, he played the kind of schizophrenic, kind of nutcase dentist patient. Remember the patient after while the main character he went into there to see the dentist, and then the next person came in and he was like in so rush and he was so jolly, so thrilled, excited to see the dentist, and he wanted the dentist to do work on him. Now we all know no one is excited to see the dentist. No one is thrilled to go see a dentist or have the dentist go do work on you. But Jack Nicholson, his performance in this, even though it was a small little part, he actually was in that part where he was loving it. He wanted to go to the dentist, but it was like a little crazy thing, and we didn't really see that much of him. But you couldn't really tell it. But that actually was Jack Nicholson in this film, and this was actually his first ever premiere on a feature film at all. Period. Straight flat out. This was his first film. So just in case you guys didn't know that, this was actually The Little Shop of Horror, which released in 1960, was actually Jack Nicholson's first ever premiere on a feature premiere film. Okay, but anyways, it's pretty much Little Shop of Horror is pretty much about I think it's pretty much the main character. He works at this plant shop, or whatever, this flower shop, whatever. And from what we see from the movie, it's kind of like almost like it's like kind of like the environmental type of animal creature type of horror. We got to see, that's what we saw in this. It was kind of like these plants were like kind of he basically he actually won an award. He was winning an award, like everybody wanted to give him an award because of the flowers that he had specifically grew. He from a baby all the way down to big, and they blossomed. But the thing is that these plants had some kind of, they were just not no regular plants. Like, they were growing big and humongous, and then they were actually kind of coming to life and everything. So that's what The Little Shop of Horror was mainly about. It was about the main character, protagonist, and the antagonist, which was not actually an actual human being. The antagonist in The Little Shop of Horror was actually flowers. I thought it was cool. It was pretty decent. It was a pretty cool film. It wasn't one of my most favorite classic horror films, but it was pretty decent. It was pretty cool for what it was. And as I said, it had it casted Jack Nicholson. He wasn't a main character. He only had a small part, but I can tell, I was able to realize that was young Jack Nicholson, his first ever premiere ever. And you couldn't tell it's Jack Nicholson unless if you wouldn't be able to tell, most of you guys, you wouldn't be able to tell it's Jack Nicholson unless maybe you go into you see the credits, or you see somewhere it says Jack Nicholson and it says plays that character. But you had to really pay attention to that scene to realize that was Jack Nicholson. And that goes to shows us too that I know a lot of people thought, I want to just go off topic for a minute, but a lot of you guys probably thought that Jack Nicholson had to get into the performance, get into the character of the Joker in the original Batman, the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton, where Jack Nicholson played Joker. But you know that famously known laugh he had, that actually wasn't something that Jack Nicholson had to get used to. Jack Nicholson, that was a laugh that's natural by him. He has that kind of laugh, so I guess he was best fit for the Joker role, because that laugh, he had that laugh in this film too, that little kind of jokery, kind of pickery laugh. He had that in A Little Shop of Horror in the 1960s film. But so that was the first film I wanted you guys to check out, and I just wanted to give you guys a little brief information right there about Jack Nicholson, just in case you guys didn't know that this was actually originally his first premiere on a feature motion picture. The next film I want to talk to you guys about actually is actually a color film. It's 1955. It came out in 1955 and it's in color. It's called Swan Woman. Now, Swan Woman, I liked it. It was pretty cool and it was pretty good. Swan Woman basically is pretty much about a group of women that are that escape from prison, escape from jail, and then they go on a hunt to try to go back and find that the lost diamonds or jewelry, the diamonds and pearls that they lost, that they basically hid. And then they broke out, and I guess they were serving time in prison and in jail, and so they got out and they tried to go back to find and figure out where basically the lost treasure that they had buried. I guess they stole it or robbed it or whatever, did a robbery or whatever. But this one was about Swan Woman. It was about a group of females. And it was one particular woman, one of the protagonists, the main protagonist, I guess you could say, she basically went undercover. She was actually a cop. She was a part of the law enforcement, but she went undercover to act as an inmate. And so when these women broke out, she broke out with them, okay, basically. But this was what the whole movie was about. These women were running around throughout the backwoods, and they were trying to find out, and they had to take a boat and everything. They were going on a little lake in the swamp and everything, on the swamp. So basically what they were doing is, and may I add, this swamp actually had alligators and crocodiles in here anyways. But anyways, this was the whole thing of the Swan Woman. It was about a group of women that broke out of prison and out of jail in order to try to retrieve some basically diamonds or some stuffed pearls, jewels that they had basically stolen or committed a robbery before they got locked up. And one of the women, which they didn't know, was actually, she was actually a part of law enforcement, but she was pretending to be an inmate. Now, the movie was crazy because, as we see in the common films, these women were starting to turn on each other. A couple of them were starting to turn on each other, but you saw a couple of them had loyalty. They were loyal. They were not trying to say, okay, be greedy, like, okay, well, if we take out this person and take out this person, then we can split it more and get more from the jewels and the diamonds and everything. But a couple of them, two of them were basically being greedy. And one of them actually, when it got to one point, one of them actually, while the other ones were asleep, the other women were asleep, one of them actually took off with the diamonds or the jewelry, whatever it was, and tried to escape to take it off for herself. But she wound up getting picked off. She wound up getting picked off by one of the main antagonists, okay, the big cahoots, okay, the tall girl with the ponytail with the kind of blondish orange hair. She was the main one, like the top notch one. And like I said, she took her out with one of those like spears. She threw it at her, and it's crazy. She got her out, but it was crazy how what I didn't like about the film though is that the way how the top one got picked. She had the little battle and stuff, and had the fight brawl with the woman that actually was pretending to be a prisoner, the inmate. I just didn't like the end in the way how the great final battle went down. I think it was too simple, and I just think it wasn't believable because of the fact that how the main antagonist, how good she was, and how she was the big kahunas, okay, how she was the big top-notch leader of the women group. I think it was just too easy how the battle between the protagonist, the main protagonist, and the main antagonist. I think the final battle, that was just too simple. I'm like, y'all could have did better with that. Y'all should have made it more to where we got to see a bigger, more battle, showdown between the antagonist and the protagonist. But that's what Swan Woman was about, basically. It was actually a very, very good film. I liked the film. It was good. As I said, it was released in 1955. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend that you watch it. It was a good film. It was a male figure, inside the film, but he was basically the one that they were holding captive and everything throughout the whole movie, I guess, because he had the boat, so that he had the resource of the boat. So that at some point throughout the film, they were using a boat, and then this guy was the one that was basically taking them along throughout the swamp in order to get to where they need to get to. So it was obviously clear throughout the movie that these girls, they didn't understand, or they didn't know exactly specifically where they had lost where they had hid the treasure at, but they wound up coming to find it eventually though. But it was a good movie all around. Once again, Swan Woman. Now, another film that I think that it was very good as well, you guys, is House on Haunted Hill. This is another film by Vincent Price, which actually Vincent Price starred in as well. For those of you guys that don't know, there was an original House on Haunted Hill by Vincent Price, and actually starring Vincent Price. It was released in 1959, so that was the original House on Haunted Hill. Now, I know a lot of people could say, arguably debatable, that House on Haunted Hill, the newer version, with the phenomenal cast, with excuse me, I think a lot of people would say, well, that was the best House on Haunted Hill. Now, I can't agree with that, but I do want to give credit to the original 1959 film of House on Haunted Hill, which was in black and white. I want to give credit where credit is due. This film was actually, even though it wasn't the best of the franchise, of the House on Haunted Hill franchise, I still think that this 1959 film was an actual a huge setting stone for the whole franchise. It was good. Even though, like, you know what I'm saying, if you haven't watched the original House on Haunted Hill film, I would highly recommend you watch it, because you'll see the difference between the newer version of House on Haunted Hill and the original version, the original film, the very first film, the original Don Dada, the first film, House on Haunted Hill. The story structure and what happened in the story was different compared to what happened in the follow-up film. In the follow-up film, we saw a lot of the cast members, a lot of the guests that came to the house, they were getting picked off. But in the original film, we didn't see a lot of them didn't get picked off. It was really based focused on a lot of scaring the guests, but really Pritchard's wife is really one of the main ones in the original House on Haunted Hill that got killed. Because after his wife died, and which we come to find out that Pritchard, which was played by Vincent Price, that he was the one that had made the little skeleton, making like the skeleton was coming alive after she died, where she fell in that kind of water thing, where it was what we call them, like the water containers, like how, you know how like the Hotel Cecile with where Lisa Lamb, where she died in, and they saying that allegedly she died in that water pump or water tank. That's what it's kind of almost seemed like, an old school water tank that she fell in, and then she just drowned to death. But after that, then the movie went off a little bit after that, after they all realized that Pritchard's wife died. I just think that it still was a good film, but I do agree with a lot of you guys that the follow-up House on Haunted Hill film was actually the best film of the franchise. But I do give all credits to where credit is due, to the original House on Haunted Hill film that came out in 1959. It was actually, yes, it was a good film, and it was a good, solid film for basically the foundation of the franchise. And it was a good overall job. Like I said, anything with Vincent Price in it, it's automatically going to be good. But also, Caroline, she did a hell of a phenomenal job in this film as far as the lungs. Boy, she was screaming her ass off all throughout this film. A phenomenal job, which I will be coming up with in the near future. I will be making an episode. I know you guys see me talk about, like, as far as like the Queen of Screams, my top 10 list of Queen of Screams. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do basically a classic or old school Queen of Screams. Okay, so I have that coming soon. But anyways, yes, I love the phenomenal job that Caroline did through this movie. I mean, she was screaming her ass off all throughout this original film. But that's all I have for you guys, okay? Once again, like, these are 3 highly recommended films I think that was good, and I think you guys should watch them if you do have the time, okay? Once again, I'm going to repeat them again. Number 1, The Little Shop of Horror. The Little Shop of Horror, which is actually Jack Nicholson's first ever premiere on an actual feature film on a film, and he was, even though he didn't have a big role in this, he was just a small role, and a lot of you probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was Jack Nicholson, but it was him. Number 2, Swamp Woman, which came out and released in 1955. Swamp Woman, actually another good film. And the 3rd one, House on Haunted Hill, the original House on Haunted Hill film, which came out in 1959, is another recommended watch. So that's all I have for you guys. I want to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in and supporting the show. So you guys already know what it is. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video. And so until next time, y'all already know what it is. Peace and blessings.